Pickleball Diaries presents Cling on the Court with your host, Lily Brown. Let's go!
Hi everyone, welcome to Cling on the Court again. Let's cracking some pickleball code with our Jeff, our performance coach. Hi Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing well, Lily. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Nice to see you again. You look very refreshed
Oh,
today.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Staying active.
So today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is how practicing singles of pickleball can help us to be a double threat more on the court. This is playing singles or practicing singles is becoming a very hot topic recently. So yeah, Jeff, like I know you have a very strong tennis background. And you also play singles and doubles, like both yourself, right? And competing at very high levels. Yeah, so do you want to talk about like why do you think playing or practicing singles can help our doubles game?
Yeah, no, yeah, first off, I agree totally that training for singles or practicing singles can really benefit your doubles game. And there's a few reasons why. And if we look at it from a tactical perspective, if we look at some of the key singles tactics and the shots that are required to execute those tactics in singles, those can benefit us greatly in some doubles scenarios or doubles situations as well. So, if we start some of the basic tactics, if we look at how a point starts in singles, so basically, if we look at the serve and return, when we're practicing those serve and return tactics in singles, they can greatly help our doubles game, and here's why. Um, so if we start with the serve, so just serving in singles, like a lot of people refer to singles as sort of like first strike type of game. So like if you have to get off to a strong start in singles in terms of the quality of your serve and your third shot, and you also have to get off to a really strong start as the returner, because if you don't, there's so much open space to hit to in singles that if you don't challenge your opponent, you become easy to pass or you become easy to move. So the quality of your serve and the quality of your return is super critical. So if we look at the serve, usually when you're practicing singles serving, you're often focusing on serving deep, but also deep with a lot of speed, and you're really highly focused on the accuracy of your serve. So, for instance, if you're serving from the right hand side in singles, if you can develop a really strong and aggressive wide serve, so if we're serving out wide to a right-handed player from the right side, we even though it's their forehand, which may be their strength, if we can stretch them with an aggressive wide serve, it might create an easy return where we can then drive our third shot to the open court, which would be their backhand, which is often the weakness. So if we train like that with that tactical intention of developing strong and accurate serves, that will also benefit us in doubles. So, when we get into doubles, there's maybe a little less benefit to a strong serve because, even if the return comes weak, you don't have as much open space to hit to. You're more going to drive the ball and maybe try and take away time, but you don't have as much open space. So the quality of the serve it's still really important in doubles, but maybe a little less important. But that said, if we develop really aggressive and accurate serves, we can expose weaknesses in doubles and hopefully create more weak returns for ourselves and our partner, where we can then maybe impose by driving the third shot or playing the third shot early by taking away time as a result of our strong serve that created the weak return. So when we practice or train for singles, often we train these aggressive serves and accurate serves, which then carries over into doubles play.
No, thank you. And I was ready for a bit build up, and then you just bring us right into the golden nuggets of the strategy. I love it. So I can foresee with this topic we can roll into 2 episodes at least. Yeah, which is great. Like because I do want to add a little bit like like correct me if I'm wrong, like a misconception because majority of like the players they started playing double because most fun part of pickleball, of course, is playing doubles. And they never touched playing singles or practicing singles. And of course, and everybody saying, oh, singles and doubles are two different animals. Um, and it almost feel like, okay, give yourself an excuse of not touching singles because singles is very um, demanding on your body and footwork. And as you said, it's intense from the get-go. Like you are on your own. You get one chance to hit very aggressively in a way. You missed it, you have a weak shot. It's almost just like done there. So I think with that, it's kind of intimidate people, um, especially like when the players they never get trained properly with the fundamental or the like fundamental shots and skills, and they got really intimidated of not just giving up on singles. So, so what do you see? Like, say, uh, even for like a rec, a player, we're talking about like 3.5, 4.0, all the way to 4.5 up. Do you see the necessity of a double players to practice singles, get that into their practice routine?
Yes, well, yeah. So I think practicing singles, it can be just a nice way to get some variety in your training. So, it's something different. So maybe that just keeps your training and your pickleball development fresh, right? But as we talked about, yeah, there's so many benefits to training singles at all levels. And again, when you train singles, because it's so important to start the point strong, you'll usually put a heavy focus on the quality of your serve and probably the quality of your return, but also the quality of your ground strokes, so your drives. And so at all levels, if you're practicing those shots more often because you're practicing singles, those benefits carry over to doubles for sure. And like I said, training singles can add some variety to keep your pickleball training just more interesting. And sometimes if you're looking for more of like a bit of a workout or fitness, training singles also because you have to cover so much more court. There's more side to side running and a lot more running in general. It can be a great way to get a workout and increase your level of fitness, which does translate over to doubles. So, doubles matches, they're physically demanding sometimes just in different ways. Like the points are often much longer. You might hit a number of dinks at the kitchen over and over where you have to get low and dink and then recover and then move to the ball and dink again and then recover. So increasing your fitness level and your movements, improving your movement skills in singles will improve your movement in doubles. It's different types of movement, but it will help you become a stronger mover and probably improve your endurance as well. So yeah, again, the benefits to training single, there's the fitness and physical elements, and then there's the tactical elements, which mostly revolve around like driving the ball and serve and return quality. And often in singles too, there's like a high focus on taking away time. So, when you have open space to hit to in singles, it's important that you can direct the ball there, but it's also important you get the ball to that open space before your opponent has a chance to cover that open space. So there's the idea of taking away time. And a simple example of that would be, if you're the server, you serve aggressively, you get a weak return, and instead of letting that weak return decline after it bounces, you actually want to move forward and take it almost on the rise or at the peak of the bounce so that you can play the ball a bit sooner to that open space and give your opponent less time to get ready. And that tactic applies in doubles as well. Taking away time in doubles is also critical because doubles, it's maybe a little bit more game of time and space in the sense that we want to give our opponents less time to react whenever possible. So if we get good at playing the ball early, we give our opponents less reaction time, especially at the net, which can challenge their ability to execute their volleys or execute their volleys with effectiveness. So those are just some examples of why training singles can be so beneficial to your doubles game.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right on the point. Like for myself, I'm every week I will hit 2 hours with my girlfriend and we will hit singles. I find it's so beneficial to my doubles game. And especially echo what you just talking about, taking the time away. So now in the doubles game, when like I communicate with my partner, when I recognize my partner has a very strong serve, and I will be watching for the short return, and I will be ready.
Yeah, totally.
I will be ready to drive on the short return. So I do find it's becomes more ease because you've been working on that shot in the singles. It's natural, but in the doubles, like when I cross the mind and using some of the singles mind, and then also I find I can see the core differently. So the angles and the coverage, I can see that differently.
Yeah, totally. Actually, a good sort of an example related to that. I was playing yesterday morning in Ottawa, and I played a lot of games with this lady. Some people may know her because she plays some tournaments, and she's quite a strong player. Her name's Genya Stefanov. Shout out to Genya. But anyways, I was playing a lot of matches with her, and she has a really strong serve. And I don't know if she recognized how strong it was. So I was telling her, like, your serve is really deep and it's got good pace. And it's clearly challenging for the players that we were playing against. It was challenging for them to return effectively. So I was saying, listen, you keep going for your serve, keep trusting it, hitting it with courage, because we're getting a lot of weak returns. So let's serve when you're serving. Let's really be on top of those short returns and look to drive our third shots to the returner, because they were struggling to get into the non-volley zone because their serve was so deep, but also the return was weak. So I was just like, hey, let's serve deep and then really go for our third shot drive back to the person who just returned it. And it was really effective. They were struggling to get to the non-volley zone, first of all, but also they were feeling the pressure of our drives because we're getting so many short returns that we could drive. However, so that said, she was talking about she wasn't super comfortable with her third shot drive yet. And now that we're talking about this right now on this podcast, like that's a perfect example of, a player like her who has this great serve, but maybe doesn't quite have the mentality to capitalize on it as much as they could. But if they trained singles a little more often, where they're repeating their ground strokes and forehand drives a lot more, that forehand drive becomes much more, you've become much more confident in it, and then you can really capitalize on that strong serve that you have. So that's just a real world example of how, if a player trains singles, they can really develop some more weapons, especially with their drives, and they can start to capitalize and look for those short balls and apply pressure in that way. So yeah, just another another good example of
Yeah, like I love these examples. I think that will be a good encouragement for double players. Like if you never try singles, just go on the court and try it and discover something you can use in your doubles game. And yeah, so I love to share another example of my discovery.
Hmm.
So, which is a down the line shot. So when I'm like working on like the drives or like often the ball coming cross court, it's just easier you cross court back. That's kind of in doubles game. And not too much changing from the baseline, except for the return, not too much changing the angle. So at least to me, I never saw like, okay, I need to looking at the angle and change. But when I play singles with this lady, a very good friend of mine, and she's such a smart player. And so so like I've been working on my two-hand backhand with the ball machine, and I thought, okay, I'm just getting so confident I can whip a very wide and deep two-hand backhand. And I recognize she just like sitting there. She doesn't even bother to move because she knew I'm gonna return cross court and deep to her backhand. She doesn't even bother to move. And then she just like turn around with her forehand and redirect and down the line and hit me before I can even move because the faster I going to cross court to her backhand, the faster she redirected down the line. And I was like, wow, she's just like really smart. So yesterday I was training for down the line to hand backhand. And because that's a shot like I never thought about I should use for the doubles. And then actually I used the ones on my doubles game because the right hand side player coming to the court and it's that person's forehand. But that person is coming more towards the kitchen, want to poach. And with that down the line, even on that person's forehand, it caught that person out of surprise. So
Yeah.
that's my example of translating the singles shot to the doubles.
Yeah, that's a good example. So that's a key tactic in singles is say if you're the server is to serve and then drive the ball to the open space, which might be a down the line shot, right? So and in doubles, yeah, same thing. If you're the left side player and you hit it, maybe you hit a really aggressive serve as the left side player and you get a weak return sort of to your side of the court, you might want to drive the ball at the net player who's right in front of you. So not the returner who's running in to the non-volley zone. You might actually go at their partner because the return is so short that you can make them feel a ton of pressure by driving the ball down the line. And often, they're just not ready to react because the ball's coming from so close that they don't have a lot of time to react. Or it might be that that player is just the weaker player. So you need to have a down the line drive, whether it's a forehand or a backhand, a down the line drive at the weaker player to pressure them. So you don't want to just get stuck in, driving the ball cross court. You need to be able to change the direction depending on your game plan and why you might be doing that. It could be just to pressure the person because it's a short return and they won't have time to react, or it might be that they're the weaker player. Or like you said, if they're really poaching towards the middle or they're moving towards the middle looking to poach and they're overcommitting, you can sort of burn them by going behind them down the line. So, but again, if you don't like by practicing singles and having the experience of hitting a lot of drives, you give yourself that skill so that if you do think that's a good tactic, you now have the skills to execute the tactic.
Yeah, exactly. So what shots do you think is transferable between from singles to the doubles?
Yeah, so serving. So when like again, when we practice our serve in singles, we tend to go for more because it's so important to try to prevent the returner from returning aggressively or effectively. So the serve. So like again, yeah, when we practice singles, we're usually practicing with more precision and we're usually probably adding more speed, and that carries over into doubles. So you naturally develop a stronger serve. Then there's the return of serve. So when you're practicing singles returns, most of the time, if the server is smart, they are trying to serve very aggressively because they don't want you to get to the net and take control of the point, and they want you to struggle to get to the net so they have an easier third shot drive to the open court. So when you're returning in singles, often you're hitting more returns because there's just two of you, so you get to actually just hit more returns, and the more we get to practice something, generally the better it's going to get. But then also our ability to handle those fast aggressive serves usually improves. And then when we're returning in singles, there's also it's so if you are going to return and run to the non-volley zone, the urgency with which you move to get to the non-volley zone is much greater because if you don't, there's just so much open space to hit to. So usually our ability to take a return and hit it and move through the contact so that we can quickly get to the non-volley zone, that skill of playing the return almost on the rise and moving through the contact, that usually improves and that carries over to doubles so that if we face aggressive servers in doubles, we'll be more used to it. Or if we just want to ensure that we really pressure the serving team by getting to the non-volley zone quickly, we'll have developed that urgency through our singles returns. And then, of course, the most probably one of the biggest carryovers from singles to doubles is our third shot drive. So in singles, it's pretty most of the time you're going to drive the third shot because again, there's more open space to hit to, and you usually want to get the ball to that open space quickly so that the player, the returner, can't get to your third shot. So you're going to spend a lot of time drilling your ground strokes, and then that carries over into doubles so that when you get weak balls, you can really apply pressure with your drives, and hopefully you're really good at being very accurate with them. So we want to keep the ball low when we drive. We want to increase the speed, but we also want to be really accurate. So when we get into doubles, if we see little weaknesses on the returning team, so maybe they have a weak forehand or weak backhand volley, we can really pinpoint where we place our drives to expose those weaknesses. And hopefully by practicing them in singles, we can also do that with a really high level of consistency. And, that's like there again, like you've mentioned this, a lot of players that just come straight into doubles, they wish they had a good drive, but they just may not be super confident in it because they don't practice it enough. And in doubles, there's so many different skills that you need that you have to divide your practice time into all these different skills. But if you do if you sprinkle in some singles only practices, the volume of drives that you're going to hit in a singles practice will be so high that that's going to carry over into doubles and you'll be much more confident in your drives.
Yeah, so talking about serve, so you look at the single serve, it's more deep and like faster speed. Do you think lob serve works in singles?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, the depth is probably the most important quality. You can argue about whether it is or isn't, but
Yeah.
depth, if we can make someone return from deep in the court, knowing that they want to run to the non-volley zone, the farther back we can keep them, the longer the distance is for them to get to the non-volley zone. So we could say that depth is the most important quality. So if we hit a lob serve, we might be able to keep the get the serve very deep. The problem with a lob serve is, it can challenge people who are not used to the change of rhythm. More experienced players can handle the lob serve pretty well. It gives them lots of time to prepare and get set up, and then they can usually execute a pretty good return. Less experienced players, maybe it throws them off because it's simply a change of rhythm, and that change of rhythm gives them time to think. And just the thought of, oh my God, what is this serve, is a distracting thought, which prevents them from executing the way that they want to. So they may be less consistent or less effective. So I do think a lob serve or something that's like a more arcing, slower, deep serve can be a good way to change rhythm. Maybe you do it every, 6 or 7 serves, you throw it in there just as a different look. But ultimately in singles, if we can develop a deep serve, but a serve that lands deep, but also has speed, so it forces the returner to return from deeper in the court, but it also challenges their ability to time the ball because the ball's arriving with such speed. That is the ultimate sort of combination. And then if we can do that and serve to a particular target, so either a more open space that stretches the returner or to their weaker stroke. So if we can serve deep with speed and with accuracy, that's the ultimate combination. So to answer your question, a lob serve can be really, really effective as a change of rhythm, and it may be more effective against less experienced players, but probably less effective against more experienced players.
Yeah, because we're just talking about like what shots you can carry over, right? So also what shots from doubles you can carry over to the singles. And also there's another interesting controversy of like we always think of often people think, okay, the singles player, they like ground strokes. They stay at baseline. They don't come to the kitchen. That often you heard that kind of comment in doubles game when you find like one of the player just like constantly stay at the baseline. So with that, also you mentioned, okay, you return, you crush to the kitchen. So as the single strategy. So do you do you have time to elaborate that kind of myth? And do you think for the singles player also they come and crush the kitchen often?
So yeah, if the answer is it depends. So if you watch professional singles on YouTube, um, a lot of the male players are trying to still come to the kitchen after the return. Um, and part of the reason for that is if we can get to the kitchen first, we can take away time and space. So we can apply pressure first. But what's happening is the server now, with Gen 3 and Gen 4 paddles, the quality of the serves is getting really high. So the serving is becoming more effective and it's more challenging to return effectively. So what's happening is sometimes you'll see in singles on the men's side, it used to be that they would return and run to the non-volley zone almost all the time because the serves weren't as challenging. So they could get a better handle on the return, place the return deep into a specific spot, and then get in and try and volley and use angles and take away space and time. But with these newer paddles that are really poppy and powerful, the server's gaining a little bit more of an advantage sometimes, and it's becoming harder to make accurate deep returns. So the answer is it depends, because if you watch the female players, they tend to, not always, because it depends on the player, but they are tending to return and stay back. And some of that is the physical quality. So on average, most of the male players on average are taller and longer than the female players. So they can cover more space at the non-volley zone from side to side. They have longer stride length and then a longer reach. So it's a little bit harder to pass them because there's a little less open space. So you see some of the majority of female players are staying back after their return. So to answer your question, it really depends. What you have to quickly assess when you're playing singles is the quality of your return good enough to make a third shot passing attempt from the server really difficult. So if you can return well enough to apply a bit of pressure on the server to the point where they don't hit really good passing shots over and over, then it probably makes sense to get to the non-volley zone as quickly as possible and apply pressure and take away time and space. Now, if you're playing someone who has a really good serve and a really good third shot drive, and your return quality isn't great, so you don't return deep very often, or you're not very accurate with it, or you're not the fastest mover and you don't get to the non-volley zone very quickly, it doesn't make sense to try and get to the non-volley zone in that case, because you might not get there quickly enough. And if you try to get in behind a weak return, you're going to be easy to pass for the server. So you have to quickly assess the quality of your return versus the quality of the server's serve and their third shot drive. And you have to make a quick distinction of whether it makes sense to try and move forward. But if you do decide to move forward, you have to do it with urgency. And that's where that skill can transfer into doubles, is that sense of like returning deep and then getting to the non-volley zone as quickly as possible to take away space and time. That does translate over to doubles.
Yeah, thank you. And like I also find with as you said, like assess the other side of the player, right? Like, and also the quality of the volley is really demanding. And I find that's another very good skill you can transfer into your doubles game.
Well, yeah, if that's another thing. If you're the returner and you get to the non-volley zone, but your volleys, like your first volley, especially when someone makes you move a little bit, if your volleys are not really threatening, or they're not accurate, or they're just inconsistent, you may want to return and just stay back and hit ground strokes because your volleys are not your strength. That said, when you're practicing singles, those first volley attempts as the returner, which is the fourth shot, often you have to react really quickly and you're maybe lunging and having to move sideways before you hit the ball. That like it can really improve your ability to like split step and then move quickly to execute a good volley. That does carry over into doubles. because most of your first volley or the fourth shot in singles is usually you're under a lot of pressure. And, when you come up against really aggressive teams in doubles, if you're used to experiencing that pressure and those drives because of your singles training, you might be a lot more comfortable receiving those aggressive drives from the serving team when you get to the net as the returner. So yeah, again, that's how a scenario or a shot that can really translate over into doubles from your singles training.
Yeah. So what do you think about the soft shot? Do you think, like in the singles, do we use drop?
Yeah, yeah. So again, you have to quickly, there's when we watch the pros on TV, like right now especially, there's a lot of drives and there are drops and there's some cat and mouse, but there's less of it than before because the paddles are getting faster, so that the ability to hit fast drives has increased. And then also like the quality and athleticism and the skill set of the professional pickleball players has also improved. So the quality of their drives and passing shots has just evolved, partially because of the paddles and partially just from that's how it is because the game is just evolving. So when we're talking about more like recreational level players or more intermediate level, it's the same as doubles. You have to quickly assess your strengths and weaknesses against the opponents. And if you're really good at hitting drops and touch shots, like soft shots, and you're really crafty with those shots, you can cause a lot of trouble for power players in singles by using those soft shots because you can make them move and you can keep the ball really low. And a lot of aggressive singles players who want to be aggressive and sort of dominate with speed and taking away time, you can really make them uncomfortable with those low, soft third shots or, soft fifth shots. Or even if you're the returner and you get to the net, you can hit like soft angled volleys instead of powerful volleys. And you can really neutralize power players by using those soft shots. So you just have to quickly analyze who your opponent is and know what your own strengths are. If you're really good at soft shots and using precision, touch, and placement, use those strengths to neutralize your opponent. The problem with soft shots in singles is that the ball travels really slowly. So it gives the person more time to get to the ball. So if you do use those soft shots, the critical element is that A, you make them move, but also B, you keep the ball low. Because if you hit a soft shot and it goes high, you've just given your opponent more time to get to the ball and it's high. So whether it's a bounce or out of the air, they can then attack it really easily. So anyways, quick analysis, determine your strengths and weaknesses and whether soft shots would be like tactics that utilize soft shots would be effective against that particular opponent you're playing.
Yeah, so I find it's works with against short ladies, like you said. They with with a drop, it's hard for them to like if they're already coming at the kitchen, it's hard for them to move around. So sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you're talking about their ability to cover space from left to right,
Yeah,
in some senses, if you're playing someone who has less reach, sometimes it might be more beneficial to drive because the ball is going away from them to an open space, presumably. And if
yeah,
it's going there with more speed, they have less reach, but they also have less time to try and get to the ball. Whereas if you're playing someone who doesn't have a long reach and you hit a soft shot, you're actually giving them more time
yeah.
because a soft shot by definition has less speed. But, as long as it's well placed and away from them, yes, it can make them take a lot of steps. And the more steps that they have to take before hitting their own shot, the less likely they are to be consistent or effective with their next shot.
Okay. So and then the next shot, slice or topspin for singles.
Yeah, so yeah, it depends. Again, you have to know your own strengths and weaknesses. For instance, I don't have a good two-handed backhand drive. I come from a tennis background, but I was a one-handed backhand
Yeah.
in tennis. I tried at one point in my junior tennis days to develop a two-handed backhand. I committed to for like 3 months of training, and I just couldn't get the feel for it. It was never going to be as good as my one-hander. So when I play singles, often if someone serves to my backhand, I return with one hand. Now that can be beneficial, but it can also be detrimental. So when I'm facing someone who hits like a really heavy, deep, fast, high bouncing topspin serve to my backhand, it can be really tough because your paddle face is open on a backhand slice. And if the ball's rising when it hits the paddle, it can be really hard to sort of knife your slice low over the net and keep the ball low. And if you don't keep the ball low with your slice return, it makes for an easier third shot passing attempt for the server. So I sometimes, if I'm desperate, I will use two hands to return really aggressive serves, so that I can play it on the rise off the short hop. I can have a really compact backswing and just try and block it back with two hands. So it depends what you're comfortable with. A slice return can be really effective if you can place it well and keep it low. Some players that aren't comfortable with hitting topspin drives may struggle to execute a good pass if you hit a good slice. But if you're playing someone who has a really good topspin drive, they can actually benefit from the underspin of a slice. I don't want to get too complicated with it, but a good slice can actually make it easier to impart topspin on the next shot for your opponent. So, if you don't execute that slice well against a person who has a great drive and a topspin drive, it can actually benefit them and make it easier for them to execute an effective drive. So the answer is it depends. A slice, if you're approaching the net, a slice often is a bit slower. So it actually gives you more time to come into the non-volley zone. So you might be able to get further forward on after your return because the slice buys you some time, compared to if you drive your return flat, you have less time to get forward. But it's a fine line, because if you hit your return slower, it gives you more time to come forward, but it gives your opponent more time to get in position for their third shot. And if you hit the return harder, it's harder for the server to get in position for their third shot, but it also gives you less time to get to the non-volley zone. But you can see this is why, in previous episodes, we've talked about all sorts of different doubles tactics, but we've also talked a lot about a player's ability to just quickly game plan and have a plan based on knowing their own strengths and weaknesses and quickly trying to decipher the strengths and weaknesses of their opponent. And in singles, you have to be able to quickly pick up on what shots your opponent likes or doesn't like and what shots they're good or not good at. So you need to try and expose their weaknesses and try to avoid giving them the shots that they want to hit. And then you've really got to try to find ways to utilize your own strengths. And again, that problem solving, that can really, I think in singles, there's a little bit more, like you have to be a bit more aware of certain tendencies from the opponent, and you have to be really good at game planning and quickly problem solving on the fly. And that can carry over into doubles as well.
That's amazing. It sounds like singles is the speed training for the doubles, all the things you need, and then it gives you less time to really think because you're there all by yourself. You need to come up with these plan. Recognizing your opponent's weakness is becoming such a key and fundamental skill for singles because all the points is going, it's faster, much shorter, and then the pace is faster than doubles, and that's why I think singles is such a momentum game. But especially I think it's really good for practicing because you need to fastly collect yourself and calm yourself and be able to think. So I think these all will be very good skills you can practice even in the rack, and then so prepare you for the doubles. There.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. If we look at it from, a tactical perspective, there's the sort of the serve, return, and the driving tactics that are the ones that you're going to practice most in singles that'll transfer over to doubles. But then, yeah, there's like the psychological and physical elements as well. So psychologically in singles, you're out there on your own, and because it's physically demanding, so you're involved in every single shot on every single point. It's physically demanding, which then makes it more psychologically demanding. And you don't have anyone else out there to sort of like strategize with, or even just sort of take the pressure off, like just having a partner and feeling like you have their support emotionally and psychologically, that can make things easier. So when you're out there on your own in singles, you've got to figure it out tactically, but also psychologically. You've got to carry the load yourself. And the physical challenges, you're covering much more space. And again, you're involved in every single shot. You're never not hitting the ball. Whereas in doubles, it might be your partner hitting a few shots in a row. You still need to be engaged, of course, in doubles, even when you're not hitting the shot, but it's not quite the same feeling. So the demands psychologically and physically for singles are it is demanding and it's challenging, and that it makes you tough. So it makes you resilient and tough physically and mentally, and that is totally going to carry over into your doubles game. So if you develop that mental and physical toughness, doubles by comparison might actually start to feel easier in that sense. There are other challenges in doubles, of course, but that physical and mental toughness from singles can really carry over into your doubles game. So yeah, lots of benefits from singles trading. And, I would encourage people to do it just for the tactical and technical benefits, but also for those psychological and physical benefits. It'll do nothing but help your game. And then there's the other element, which you kind of you touched on it already, is like it's a new problem to solve. So if it's like playing singles is new for you, it's just you don't know what the right tactics are. You're not used to trying to find out the strengths and weaknesses of a single opponent, and it creates new challenges for you to solve. And in turn, that will make you a better problem solver. You'll be better at figuring things out and having to figure them out quickly. And that can also translate into doubles in terms of seeking out strengths and weaknesses from your opponent and just becoming or having that problem solver mentality.
Well, thank you for the wrapping up, and I think it's perfect. I think in the nutshell, it's like power yoga and single sounds like the power training for the doubles all around.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then I think we all agree upon we need to train singles if possible.
Yeah.
Everybody out there. And don't be shy, don't feel intimidated, and just go to the court, grab a partner, and start training. And I think next week, and we're going to talk about following our topic this week, we'll talk about the single strategy. You go on the single court. What's the strategy? How do you what kind of pattern you think you see or you can build and develop? And also, how do we train? How do we train our singles with a purpose? It's not just back and forth hitting ground strokes. And how do we develop certain shots and help us in both singles and doubles? So I'm very looking forward to next week's discussion and gonna looking forward to learning more from our coach Jeff. So thank you so much and coming with us and share your knowledge with us, Jeff, this week again. The same time, the listeners out there, please follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube and the um, podcast platform. Just search for the word clean. And also, Jeff, do you want to talk about also your website and
Oh,
where our listeners can find you?
yeah, sure. So thanks, Lily. Um, yeah, I have my own website called elwoodpickleball.com, and it just has a little bit of information about me, so that if anyone's interested in coaching or clinics or camps, they can reach out through my website. It's just got some information about myself and sort of my coaching methodology. And also there's some resources on there, some articles. I've also got some videos up there, including our podcast videos. So people can get a hold of me or reach out through my website at elwoodpickleball.com. Thanks, Lily.
That's amazing. Thank you. I will see everyone soon again next week. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.